The moment of final awakening came, not with thunder and lightning but with a whisper that echoed across the galaxy. Captain Jin-Ho Kim felt it first as a gentle touch in his mind, then as a roaring flood of consciousness that connected him to every human alive. The genetic locks that had held his species prisoner for 50,000 years shattered like glass. Dr. So-Min Park no longer needed to struggle with the ancient controls. The ship responded to her thoughts as naturally as her own body. Every system, every weapon, every defensive measure was now an extension of her will. The vessel that had seemed so alien moments before now felt like coming home after a long journey. Lieutenant Tae-Young Lee watched in amazement as the communication channels came alive with voices from across the galaxy. Human crews on mining stations, research outposts, and colony worlds were all reporting the same experience. They were remembering who they truly were, but the awakening was more than just recovered memory. It was evolution in real time. The human consciousness was expanding beyond the limits that had contained it for millennia. Individuals began to perceive reality in ways that had been impossible before seeing patterns that connected all life in the galaxy. The Devourer fleet, which had seemed so terrifying moments earlier, now appeared different to human eyes. They were revealed as creatures of pure hunger and emptiness, driven by a need they could never satisfy. They fed on life and consciousness but could never truly understand either. Captain, the quantum resonance is changing. So-Min reported as she monitored readings that went beyond normal science. The awakening is affecting space-time itself. Reality is becoming more stable around human consciousness while breaking down near the Devourers. Jin-Ho could see it happening. The space around the human fleet was becoming brighter, somehow more real, while the area around the Devourer ships was fading into shadow. The ancient enemy existed partially outside normal reality, but human awareness was forcing them back into the physical universe, where they could be fought. The largest Devourer ship moved to attack the ancient human vessel, but its entropy weapons, no longer, had the same effect. The beams that should have aged the ship to dust instead seemed to restore it, making the ancient hull shine like new metal awakened after centuries of sleep. "This is impossible," the Devourer voice screamed across all frequencies. "Human consciousness was supposed to be limited. You were made weak and small and ignorant. How can you resist us because we remember now?" Jin-Ho replied, broadcasting on channels that reached across dimensions. "We remember that we are not just individuals. We are part of something greater than ourselves. We are the guardians of life itself." The truth was flowing through the human fleet, now carried by the quantum entanglement that connected all human minds. The species had been created not through natural evolution, but as a deliberate act of cosmic engineering. They were designed to be the immune system of the galaxy, protecting life from threats that existed beyond normal space and time. But the design had included a safety mechanism. If humans ever became corrupted by power or lost sight of their purpose, the genetic locks would activate, keeping them limited until they could remember their true nature. The betrayal by the Galaxy Council had triggered those locks 50,000 years ago. The test was complete. Humanity had faced the ultimate temptation, the chance to become gods ruling over lesser species, and they had chosen instead to remain guardians and protectors. This choice had broken the final lock and released their full potential. Commander Hyunwoo Choi coordinated the human fleet with a precision that went beyond normal military tactics. Every ship moved in perfect harmony with the others, not because they were following orders, but because they were all part of the same awakened consciousness. The boundaries between individual minds were dissolving into something larger. The Galaxy Council ships found themselves caught between the human fleet and the Devourers. They had nowhere to run and no allies to call. The species they had betrayed were offering them a choice: submit to judgment or be consumed by the enemies they had unleashed. Some council ships chose to fight, firing their weapons at both humans and Devourers in a final act of desperate madness. But their technology was primitive compared to what the awakened humans could now access. Their ships were disabled with surgical precision, and their crews taken into protective custody. Others chose surrender, broadcasting their capitulation and begging for mercy. They would face trial for their crimes against humanity, but they would live to see the new galaxy that was being born from the ashes of the old. The Devourers made one final desperate attack, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. But their weapons were useless against consciousness that had transcended physical limitations. The entropy beams that should have dissolved matter simply could not affect minds that existed partially outside normal spacetime. So mine activated the ancient ship's ultimate weapon system. Not a device that destroyed matter, but one that created it. The ship began generating new stars, new worlds, new possibilities for life to flourish. The creative force that had built the original galaxy was awakening in human hands. The Devourers retreated, screaming back into the void between dimensions, but this time their prison would be permanent. The rifts in space-time were sealed by human will, reinforced with the love and hope and courage that the ancient enemy could not consume. Across the galaxy, the awakening continued. Ancient human installations came online not as weapons of war, but as tools of creation, terraforming stations that could turn dead worlds into gardens of life. Space, elevators that reached between dimensions, research facilities that could unlock the secrets of existence itself. The Galaxy Council homeworld received a message from Commander Choi, broadcast simultaneously to every inhabited world in known space. "The time of deception is over," he announced. "Humanity remembers its purpose as guardians of all life. We do not seek dominance or revenge. We seek only to fulfill our duty as protectors of the galaxy. But protection would now come with conditions. The species that made up the Galaxy Council would face justice for their crimes. They would be required to make reparations for the damage they had caused, and they would never again be allowed to threaten any sentient species with extinction." Some alien races welcomed the return of their ancient protectors. They had grown tired of the Council's corruption and incompetence, and were ready for leadership that actually served the cause of life and growth. Others resisted, fearing that humanity would prove as tyrannical as their predecessors. But resistance was futile, not because humans used force to compel obedience, but because the awakened consciousness was irresistibly attractive to minds that had been trapped in limitation and fear. The Galaxy Council had ruled through intimidation and lies. Humanity offered something far more powerful: truth and hope. The ancient ship that had started it all continued its mission as a beacon of the new age. Its crew no longer just Jin-Ho So-min and Tae-young, but representatives of awakened humanity itself, traveled from system to system, spreading the message of liberation and renewal. The galaxy's deepest secret was a secret no more. Humanity had returned to claim their birthright not as conquerors but as gardeners, tending the vast field of stars and nurturing the growth of consciousness wherever it appeared. The age of the Galaxy Council was ending, but the age of the Galaxy Guardians had just begun. And in the vast spaces between, the stars' new possibilities were being born every moment as the universe itself awakened to its true potential under human guidance. Captain Jin-Ho Kim stared at the massive ship floating in the empty space before them. The ancient vessel was unlike anything he had ever seen in his 10 years of space travel. Its dark metal surface was covered with strange symbols that seemed to move when he looked at them directly. The ship was easily 10 times larger than his own research vessel. New Sol, and it gave off an energy reading that made his instruments go crazy. Dr. So-min Park looked up from her science station with worry written all over her face. "Captain, these energy readings are completely off the charts," she said. Her voice was shaking slightly. "I have never seen anything like this in all my years studying alien technology. The patterns are so complex that our computers cannot even begin to understand them." Jin-Ho walked over to look at her screen. The energy waves dancing across the display looked almost alive. They pulsed and moved in ways that reminded him of a heartbeat, but much more complicated. "This is definitely not natural," he said. "What could create energy patterns like these?" Lieutenant Tae-young Lee turned around from his communication console. "Captain, I am picking up some kind of transmission from that ship. It sounds like a recording, but the language is very old. I think it might be Old Galactic, but I am not completely sure." Old Galactic was the ancient language that all the galaxy species used to speak before the Galaxy Council made everyone learn. Standard Galactic. Jin-Ho had only heard about it in history classes. Nobody had spoken Old Galactic for over 1,000 years, according to what the Council taught them. Why would an old ship be broadcasting in a dead language? The transmission crackled through the speakers and filled the bridge with strange sounds. The words were harsh and musical at the same time. Nothing like the smooth sounds of standard galactic that Jin-Ho was used to hearing. He felt a strange chill run down his spine as he listened to the alien words. Can you translate any of it? Jin-Ho asked Tae-young. I am trying, sir, but my translation programs are having trouble with the old grammar. The computer says some of these word patterns do not exist in any known database. Tae-young frowned at his screen. It is almost like this recording is older than our oldest records. Dr. So-min Park suddenly gasped and pointed at her scanner. Captain, look at this. The ship is not just broadcasting that message. It is scanning us. The energy beams are very gentle, but they are definitely studying our ship and probably us too. Jin-Ho felt his heart start beating faster. What kind of scan? Are we in danger? I do not think so. The scans feel more like curiosity than aggression. But Captain, there is something else. The ship is responding to our presence. The energy levels are increasing and some of the symbols on the hull are starting to glow. Through the main view screen, Jin-Ho could see that So-min was right. The strange symbols carved into the ship's surface were beginning to shine with a soft blue light. The light pulsed in rhythm with the energy readings on their instruments. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, sir. I think the ship wants us to come aboard, Tae-young said. His translation programs finally started working better. The message keeps repeating the same phrase over and over. Come home, children of the stars. Come home and remember, come home. Jin-Ho repeated. The words felt strange in his mouth, but also somehow familiar, like a song he had heard long ago but could not quite remember. Children of the stars. What does that mean? We need to investigate this. Captain, So-min said. Her scientific curiosity was stronger than her fear. This could be the discovery of a lifetime. Think about what we could learn from technology. This advance, the Council has never shown us anything like this. Jin-Ho knew she was right, but he also knew the danger. The Galaxy Council had very strict rules about what humans were allowed to explore. They said it was for humanity's protection. But sometimes Jin-Ho wondered if there were other reasons. The Council always seemed nervous when humans asked too many questions about ancient history or advanced technology. What if the Council does not want us to find this ship? Jin-Ho asked. What if there is a reason they never told us about vessels like this one? So-min and Tae-young looked at each other. The same thought was clearly in their minds. The Galaxy Council had always been very controlling about what humans could and could not do in space. They limited where human ships could go and what technology humans could have. They said it was because humans were still young and needed protection. But what if that was not the real reason, Captain? I am receiving another transmission, Tae-young said. This one is different. It is not in old galactic. It is in something much older. The computer cannot even identify the language. Family, play it. Jin-Ho ordered. The new transmission filled the bridge with sounds that were somehow both alien and familiar. The words seemed to bypass their ears and speak directly to something deep inside their minds. Jin-Ho felt tears forming in his eyes without knowing why. The sounds made him feel homesick for a place he had never been. So-min gasped and grabbed her console for support. Captain, I am getting flashes of something. Images in my mind. Pictures of ships like this one, but thousands of them. They are fighting something dark and terrible in space. The battle is huge, Captain, bigger than anything in our history books. Jin-Ho was getting the same images. The flashes came and went too quickly to understand, but he saw massive space battles, weapons that could destroy planets and ships filled with beings that looked almost human but not quite. They were taller and stronger, and their eyes held knowledge that seemed older than stars. The transmission stopped suddenly and the bridge fell silent. The three humans stood looking at each other with wonder and fear in their eyes. Whatever they had just experienced was beyond anything their training had prepared them for. Captain, So-min said quietly, I think we need to go aboard that ship. I think it has been waiting for us for a very long time. Jin-Ho nodded slowly. He could feel the truth of her words in his bones. The ship was not just broadcasting randomly, it was calling to them specifically, like it recognized something in their genetic code that even they did not know was there. But he also knew that once they stepped aboard that ancient vessel, their lives would never be the same again. The Galaxy Council had worked very hard to keep humans away from their own past. What would happen when they finally learned the truth? Prepare a boarding, Shuttle Jinho ordered, and send a message back to Earth Command. Tell them we have found something that will change everything. Tell them the children of the stars are coming home. The ancient ship waited patiently in the void, its symbols glowing, brighter as the human shuttle approached. Whatever secrets it held had been waiting for this moment for countless centuries. Soon the truth would finally be revealed, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The battle raged around the ancient human ship as Captain Jinho Kim felt more genetic memories flooding his consciousness. He could see through the eyes of his ancestors during the Great War against the Devourers 50,000 years ago. The enemy had been different than smaller and less organized, but infinitely more hungry. Dr. So-Min Park screamed as another wave of ancestral knowledge hit her mind. Captain, the memories are showing me something terrible. The Devourers are not just trying to destroy us. They are trying to break reality itself. They feed on the life force of entire species, but their real goal is to unravel the fabric of space and time. Lieutenant Tae-Young Lee monitored the energy readings as the battle intensified. Sir, the Devourers are doing something to space around their ships. The gravitational fields are becoming unstable. They are creating tears in space-time itself. Through the view screen, Jinho could see what Tae-Young meant. Dark rifts were opening around, the Devourer fleet revealing glimpses of something that existed beyond normal space. The void between dimensions where the laws of physics broke down and chaos ruled supreme. The ancient ship shuddered as it fired its main weapons at the largest Devourer vessel. The beams of crystallized starlight struck the enemy hull, but instead of destroying it, they seemed to be absorbed. The dark ship grew larger and more solid as it fed on the energy that will not work against them. So-Min said as genetic knowledge guided her hands over the controls. Our ancestors learned that conventional weapons only make the Devourers stronger. The only way to fight them is to use their own hunger against them. She activated systems that Jinho had never seen before, weapons that did not fire energy or matter, but something far more fundamental. They fired pure information coded in ways that confused the Devourer consciousness and made them turn on each other. The effect was immediate. The largest Devourer ship began attacking its own escorts as the information virus spread through their collective mind. The dark vessels turned their entropy weapons on each other, dissolving into shadows and screams. But more Devourers were coming through the rifts in space, hundreds of them pouring out of the void between dimensions like a plague of living darkness. Each one was hungry for the life energy that flowed through normal space, and they could sense the awakening human consciousness like sharks smelling blood. Captain, I am detecting something else, Tae-Young reported. There are signals coming from the Devourer fleet transmissions in Old Galactic. They are communicating with someone in this system. The communication screen flickered to life, showing not a Devourer, but a familiar purple-skinned alien. The same council commander who had demanded their surrender was now speaking directly to the ancient enemy. You have fulfilled your part of the bargain. The council commander said to the darkness. Beyond the screen, humanity is awakening as you predicted. Now you must honor our agreement. A voice like grinding metal and dying stars answered him from the void. Foolish little shepherd, you think we make bargains with food? The only agreement we have is that you will feed us first for your betrayal of the Galaxy Guardians. Jinho felt sick as he understood what had happened. The Galaxy Council had not just accidentally released the Devourers. They had made a deliberate alliance with them. The plan had been to use the ancient enemy to destroy humanity once and for all, then somehow control them afterward. But the Devourers had never intended to honor any agreement. They had simply used the Council as tools to break free from their prison, and now they were ready to consume everything in the galaxy, starting with their former allies. So-Min gasped as she accessed deeper levels of the ship memory. Captain, there is something else. The Devourers are not just enemies. They are a test. They were created by something even older and more powerful, as a way to determine which species deserve to inherit the galaxy. The genetic memories showed her the truth about the universe. Countless civilizations had risen and fallen over billions of years. Each one had eventually faced the devourer test, and most had failed. Only those species that could overcome their own nature and work together had the strength to defeat the ancient enemy. Humanity had been chosen as guardians because they possessed something unique among galactic species: the ability to sacrifice themselves for others. Even when corrupted by power or driven by fear, humans still retained the capacity for genuine selflessness. This was the key to defeating the devourers. But the test was not just about fighting an external enemy. It was about overcoming the darkness within. The devourers fed on negative emotions: fear, hatred, greed, jealousy. The more a species gave in to these feelings, the stronger the enemy became. This was why the Galaxy Council had ultimately failed in their original battle against the devourers. Their betrayal of humanity had been driven by jealousy and fear, and those emotions had given the enemy the strength to break free from their prison captain. "The human fleet is arriving," Taeyong announced through the chaos of battle. Jin-Ho could see dozens of human ships emerging from hyperspace. They were not just research vessels, but the entire human expeditionary force that had been scattered across the outer rim. Every human ship in deep space was converging on this system, but these were not the same vessels that had left Earth months ago. As the genetic awakening spread through the human crews, the ships themselves were changing. Ancient systems that had been built into human technology without anyone realizing it were coming online. The ship hulls restructured themselves, becoming sleeker and more deadly. Weapon systems that had never existed in the blueprints materialized from quantum. Storage technology that had been hidden in human genetic code for 50,000 years was finally being expressed. Commander Hyunwoo Choi appeared on the communication screen from the flagship Busan. His eyes glowed with the same inner light that Jin-Ho felt in his own consciousness. "All human crews are reporting the same phenomenon, Martin. We remember everything now. We know who we are and what we must do." The awakening was not just affecting individuals, but the entire human species. They were becoming something more than they had been before, not through technology or genetic engineering, but through the simple act of remembering their true nature. As the human fleet engaged the devourers in battle, the galaxy itself seemed to respond to their presence. Ancient defense systems that had been built by the first builders began activating on worlds throughout human space. Weapons platforms that had slept in the dark between stars awakened and turned their attention toward the ancient enemy. But the real power was not in weapons or technology. It was in the human consciousness itself. As the species remembered what it meant to be guardians of the galaxy, they began to radiate a force that the devourers could not consume. Love, hope, courage, sacrifice — these emotions were poison to the ancient enemy. The tide of battle began to turn as more human ships arrived, not just from Earth, but from colonies throughout the galaxy. Every human in space was feeling the call and responding. Farmers and miners and merchants were abandoning their work to join the fight, not because they were ordered to, but because they finally understood their purpose. The Galaxy Council fleet tried to retreat, but found their way blocked by human vessels. The time for running was over. The species that had betrayed their guardians 50,000 years ago would finally face judgment for their crimes, and in the dark void between stars, the devourers realized they had made a terrible mistake. They had awakened their greatest enemy at the moment when humanity was finally ready to fulfill its destiny as protectors of all life in the cosmos. Captain Jin-Ho Kim watched the tactical display with growing alarm as two massive fleets closed in on their position. The devourer ships moved like living shadows across space, while the Galaxy Council fleet approached from the opposite direction. Both forces seemed determined to reach the ancient human ship before the other. Dr. So-Min Park worked frantically at the ancient controls as more systems came online around them. "Captain, the ship is responding to my commands, but I am getting flashes of memory that are not mine. I know how to operate weapons I have never seen before. It's like the ship is teaching me through my bloodline." Lieutenant Tae-Young Lee monitored the approaching fleets. "Sir, the council ships are broadcasting on all frequencies. They are ordering us to surrender immediately. They say we have violated galactic law by boarding this vessel. They claim it belongs to them. Jin-Ho felt anger burning in his chest. The Council had lied to humanity for thousands of years. They had poisoned his ancestors and stolen their birthright. Now they wanted to silence the truth before it could spread. "Tell them we decline their generous offer," he said. The ancient ship suddenly shuddered as its main engines came to life after 50,000 years of sleep. The power core that had waited so long for human hands to awaken, it began generating energy levels that made their instruments scream warnings. This was not just a ship. Jin-Ho realized it was a weapon designed to fight gods. So-min gasped as another wave of genetic memory hit her. "Captain, I can see the last battle. The final fight against the Devourers. Our ancestors sacrificed everything to lock them away. They used their own life force to create the prison that held the enemy for so long. But something went wrong," Tae-young added as he accessed more of the ship's records. "The prison was supposed to be permanent, but the Council ancestors broke it. They thought they could control the Devourers and use them as weapons against humanity." The truth was even more horrifying than they had imagined. The Galaxy Council had not just poisoned humanity to prevent them from remembering their past. They had deliberately released the Devourers, believing they could make a deal with the ancient enemy. The plan had been to let the Devourers destroy human civilization completely, then somehow contain them again. But the Devourers had no intention of honoring any agreement. They had simply waited in the dark spaces between stars, growing stronger and more hungry with each passing century. Now they were ready to finish what they had started 50,000 years ago. "Captain, the Devourer fleet is within weapons range," So-min reported. Her hands moved over controls with impossible skill as genetic knowledge flowed through her. "The lead ship is massive, Captain, easily 100 times larger than anything in the current galaxy." Through the view screen, Jin-Ho could see the enemy vessels more clearly now. They were not built. So much has grown. Their hulls pulsed with organic movement and their weapons glowed with the light of dying stars. The largest ship at the center of the formation radiated malice so pure that looking at it made his eyes water. The Council fleet reached them first. A dozen modern warships surrounded the ancient human vessel with weapons charged. Their commander appeared on the communication screen, a tall alien with purple skin and too many eyes. "You will surrender the illegal technology immediately," the Council commander demanded. "Humanity does not have clearance for weapons of this level. You are endangering the entire galaxy with your reckless actions." Jin-Ho stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "Commander, we know the truth now. We know what you did to our people. We know about the great forgetting and the real reason you have kept us weak." The Council commander's expression changed from anger to fear. "Impossible," he whispered. The neural toxins were supposed to be permanent. Human genetic memory was supposed to be completely destroyed, but it was not destroyed, was it? Jin-Ho replied. "It was only sleeping, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And now that moment has come." The ancient ship around them continued to power up as more systems responded to human genetic signatures. Weapon arrays that had been dark for millennia began charging with energy that made space itself ripple. The ship was not just awakening, it was remembering its purpose. So-min suddenly cried, out as a massive download of information flooded her mind. "Captain, I can see everything now. The whole history of our people. We were not just the first builders. We were the galaxy shepherds, the protectors of all life in the cosmos." The genetic memories showed her the truth about human nature. Humans were not just another species, they were something unique in the galaxy. They possessed the ability to grow and adapt beyond any known limits. Their consciousness could expand to encompass entire star systems when properly developed. This was why they had been chosen as guardians, but the other species had grown jealous and afraid. As humanity grew in power and wisdom, the lesser races began to plot against them. They formed the first version of the Galaxy Council specifically to find a way to bring down their protectors. The betrayal had come during the final battle against the Devourers. When humanity needed their allies most, the Council ancestors had struck. They released a bioweapon, designed to target human neural pathways, wiping out not just memory, but the ability to access their full potential. "Sir, the Devourer fleet is opening fire." Tae-young shouted. The space around them erupted in violence as the ancient enemy engaged both the human ship and the Council fleet. The Devourer's weapons were unlike anything in modern warfare. They fired beams of pure entropy that aged whatever they touched into dust in seconds. But the ancient human ship was ready for this fight. Its shields, activated automatically, forming barriers of crystallized space-time that turned the entropy beams back on their attackers. The weapons systems that So-min was learning to control fired bolts of concentrated starlight that burned through Devourer, hulls like they were made of paper. The Council ships tried to retreat, but it was too late. The Devourers had waited too long for this moment. They fell upon the modern vessels with savage hunger, tearing them apart to feed on the life energy of their crews. Jin-ho watched the slaughter with grim satisfaction. The Council had created this situation through their betrayal and lies. Now they were paying the price, but he knew this was only the beginning. "Captain." So-min called out, "I am receiving signals from other human ships across the galaxy. The awakening is spreading. Every human in space is starting to remember who they are. The genetic locks are breaking down everywhere. Across human space, ancient installations that had been dormant for millennia began powering up, responding to the genetic keys that were finally being turned. Weapons platforms that had waited in asteroid belts came online. Sleeping AI systems that had been designed by the first builders awakened and began seeking their human masters. The hunt was no longer just about one ancient ship. It was about the rebirth of the most powerful civilization the galaxy had ever known. And the Galaxy Council was about to learn why they had been so afraid of humanity for so long. Real war was just beginning. The shuttle bay doors of the ancient ship opened without any sound as Captain Jin-ho Kim guided his small craft inside. The docking process felt automatic, like the ship knew exactly where they should land the moment their shuttle touched down. The massive doors sealed shut behind them with a soft whisper of moving metal. Dr. So-min Park checked her environmental scanner. "The atmosphere inside is breathable, Captain, but there are strange particles in the air. Nothing dangerous, but definitely not natural. These particles seem to be affecting our brain chemistry in small ways." Jin-ho felt it too. A tingling sensation in his mind, like someone was gently touching his thoughts. The feeling was not unpleasant, but it was definitely alien. He looked at Lieutenant Tae-young Lee, who was staring around the shuttle bay with wide eyes. The walls of the bay were covered with the same glowing symbols they had seen on the ship's exterior, but now the symbols were moving much faster. The blue light pulsed in waves that seemed to match their heartbeats. Jin-ho had the strangest feeling that the ship was trying to communicate with them through the lights. Sir Tae-young said in a whisper, "I can almost understand what the symbols are saying. It's like they are speaking directly to something inside my head, but in a language I never learned." So-min nodded. She was getting the same feeling. The symbols tell a story. Captain A. Story about us, about humans. I can see flashes of images when I look at them. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The ship was clearly built for beings much taller than humans, but somehow the proportions felt familiar. The walls were lined with viewing screens that activated as they passed, showing star maps and battle formations that looked like nothing in current galactic databases. In the central computer core, they found what they were looking for. The main terminal came to life the moment So-min approached it, responding to her genetic signature like it had been waiting for her specifically. The holographic display filled with data streams in languages both ancient and impossibly advanced. "Captain, look at this." So-min gasped as she worked to decode the information. These files show star charts from over 50,000 years ago. The galaxy looked completely different then. "And Captain, there are human colonies marked on thousands of worlds. That is impossible." Jin-ho said, "Humans have only been in space for 200 years. The Council records show that we evolved on Earth and never left until they found us. The files say otherwise." So-min replied. Her hands moved over the controls with growing confidence, as if she had used this technology before. According to these records, humans once controlled most of this galaxy. We called ourselves the first builders, and we created all the hyperspace lanes that every species uses today. More images flooded the display, showing vast human cities on alien worlds. Great. Ships that dwarfed anything in the current galaxy. Advanced technology that made council science look primitive. Human beings working alongside alien species as teachers and protectors rather than junior partners. But then something terrible happened. So-Min continued. The records call it the Great Forgetting. A catastrophe that wiped out human civilization across the galaxy. The details are fragmented, but it shows our ancestors losing their memories, their technology, everything. Tae-Young had found another terminal and was accessing communication logs. His face was pale as he read the ancient messages. Captain, you need to see this. These are conversations between early council members. They are discussing something called the Human Protocol. Jin-Ho read over his shoulder and felt his blood turn cold. The messages were clear. The Galaxy Council had not just discovered Earth, they had been watching humanity for thousands of years. They knew exactly who humans were, and they were determined to keep that knowledge hidden. According to this, So-Min said, reading from her own screen, the Council was terrified that humans would eventually remember their true nature. They implemented policies to keep us isolated and dependent. They limited our expansion, gave us restricted technology, and made sure we never developed beyond a certain point. The most shocking revelation came from the deepest files. The Great Forgetting had not been a natural disaster. The Council ancestors had caused it deliberately. They had used a neural toxin designed specifically for human genetics to wipe the memories of an entire species. They poisoned us, Jin-Ho said in disbelief. They destroyed our civilization and scattered the survivors to make sure we would never threaten them again. But why? So-Min asked. Why would they be so afraid of us that they would commit genocide? The answer came from the ship's central memory core. As the files unlocked, more secrets became clear. Humanity had not just been another galactic power. They had been the guardians of the galaxy. The protectors who stood between all life and an ancient enemy that threatened everything. The enemy was called the Devourers in the old records. Creatures of pure malevolence that consumed entire worlds and left nothing but empty space behind. Humanity had fought a war against them that lasted thousands of years, finally defeating them at enormous cost. The knowledge of how to fight the Devourers was locked in human genetic memory. So-Min read, the information is passed down through bloodlines and can only be accessed when humans reach a certain level of development. But Captain, the final log entry says the Devourers are not dead. They are only sleeping. Jin-Ho felt the pieces falling into place. The Council had kept humanity weak, not just because they feared human power, but because they feared what that power was meant to fight. If humans remembered who they were, they would also remember the ancient enemy. And if the Devourers ever returned, only humans would know how to stop them. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Tae-Young ran to the communication station. Captain, I am detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple ships approaching. Fast configuration unknown. The main display showed the approaching fleet, dark angular vessels that seemed to absorb light itself. Ships that looked nothing like any known galactic design. They moved in formations that hurt to look at directly, and they radiated a coldness that made everyone on the bridge shiver. The Devourers have returned. So-Min whispered as genetic memories began stirring in her mind. And they know we are here. Jin-Ho felt something awakening inside him. Knowledge that was not his own, but belonged to his species. Memory of battles fought among the stars. Techniques for fighting an enemy that existed partially outside normal space. The genetic locks that had kept this information hidden for millennia were finally breaking. Down all around them, the ancient ship began coming fully online. Systems that had waited 50,000 years for the right genetic signature to activate them suddenly blazed to life. The vessel revealed itself to be not just a derelict, but a sleeping weapon, a dreadnought of the first builders waiting for its creators to return. Captain Tae-Young called out, the Council fleet is also approaching. They must have been monitoring our communications. They know what we found. Jin-Ho looked at the tactical Display showing two fleets converging on their position, the Devourers coming to destroy the last hope of the galaxy, and the Council coming to silence the truth that could save everyone. For the first time in 50,000 years, humanity was about to remember who they really were, and the galaxy would never be the same again.